We are in the middle of a conversation about Rabbi Yosi. Let's just recap. We are dealing with a Mishnah. Mishnah is a case of two people arguing over potential ownership. Notice the emphasis on the word potential. Potential ownership of a garment that they came across. Now, there are two possibilities of how they came across this garment. Either they found it in the street, and now each one is claiming, I'm the guy who found it first, and therefore I deserve it. Or there was some negotiation with a seller that went a bit awry, and now each one of them believes that I'm actually the person who sold it to. Either way, these two fellows are arguing over the rights to the tallis. They come in front of the court. Court tells us, all right, you take an oath that you deserve no less than half. You take an oath that you deserve no less than half. And then we're going to give you each no less than half. Okay, that's how we deal with it. The Gemorah at this point, and we are nearing the end of this particular segment, the Gemorah at this point is doing a test. It's a very common test that Gemorahs do, where you have a Mishnah, like ours, that does not quote any specific sage. The implication is that whatever the Mishnah states is acceptable according to all of the sages. Now we're doing a little test, and we're saying, in our knowledge of what's out there in the broader world of Gemorah, we are aware of the fact that there are other rabbis who speak about similar scenarios, and they don't necessarily seem like they agree with this Mishnah. So can we just test that, please? Can we just see if we've misunderstood something, or perhaps misunderstood the Mishnah, whatever the case is? Can we just, see if these people align with our Mishnah? So we did that first with somebody called Ben Nanas. Then we did it with Sumchus, and by extension, the other rabbis who are engaged with the debate with Sumchus. And now we're dealing with Rabbi Yosi. And again, while we're about it, we get into the conversation. Jeez. Anyway, so we've got Rabbi Yosi and we've got the sages. And the question is, what are they talking about? And why do we think that it clashes with our Mishnah? So let's just try to remind ourselves. There's more than one scenario. It doesn't matter which. Can we just pick out one of the scenarios and remind ourselves what it is that Rabbi Yosi and the rabbis were debating? Does anybody remember the scenario, the case? That's it, exactly. There are two people who each deposit money with a third party. So let's give them names, because that will always make life easier. So there is, like we always do in Gemorah, there's Ruvain and Shimon and Levi. Okay, so Ruvain and Shimon both deposited money with Levi to look after. One of them deposited 100 zuz. One of them deposited 200 zuz. Okay, now it's time to get their money back. Reuven comes to Levi and he says, where's my 200 zuz? Shimon comes to Levi and says, where's my 200 zuz? Levi says, oops, we have a problem. So now what do we do? Because it would appear that somebody over here is being a little dishonest, because the fact is, one person gave 100 zuz, one person gave 200 zuz. So, how did such a scenario even happen? Okay? So what do they do? So the Gemorah, the Mishnah says this, again, there's two opinions, Rabbi Yosi and the sages. So, all right, so what does Rabbi Yosi say? Well, let's start with the sages. What do the sages say? The sages say, look, what's true is that each of these people deserves 100 zuz. That's for sure. Give this guy 100 zuz, give that guy 100 zuz. Okay? But there's now 100 zuz in question. The only fair thing to do is hold on to that 100 zuz and don't let anybody have it, because we don't want to accidentally give the wrong amount to the wrong person. According to Rabbi Yosi, he says that doesn't make sense, because if you do that, then the person who is lying over here hasn't felt any heat. He's still getting his 100 zuz back. So Rabbi Yosi says keep everything, and until Eliyahu comes, which essentially means until somebody owns up, because they're not going to live long enough to necessarily to see Eliyahu, right? Okay. So that's how Rabbi Yosi. What's that? I'm talking about a situation that happened 1,500 years ago. Yeah, but this happened 1,500 years ago. Okay. Okay. Anyway, so now we say that doesn't really seem to match with our Mishnah, because in our Mishnah we're not saying confiscate the whole amount. We're saying divide it. So we seem quite comfortable in our Mishnah to potentially allow somebody to get something they don't deserve. Surely that does not work with Rabbi Yosi's view. Okay? That's where we got up to. And then the Gemara says, well, doesn't seem to fit with the rabbi's view either, because the rabbi said the amount that we can't qualify, the amount that we don't know who to allocate to, you should take from them. Now, in our case, the whole tallis falls into that category. So surely, if the rabbis were willing to take the amount in question and lock it away indefinitely, surely they would have taken our tallis and locked it away indefinitely, surely. That's where we got up to. Page 24. Asks the Gemorah, hi, my. Anybody remember what that means? Hi, my. I'm actually dealing with somebody right now. Their name is Mai. So, hi, Mai. Right? So what does hi, my mean? So we said hi is this case, this conflict. My, what's the answer? What's the resolution? What's the resolution? Now what we're going to see over here is something similar to what we saw in the Sumchus argument, which is, I can easily settle the conflict that you believe there is between the rabbis and our Mishnah. But on further reflection, the conflict between Rabbi Yosi and our Mishnah is worse than we thought. That's where the Gemara is going to go at this point. So, hi, my. Okay, so we're going to the formula that we're using over here is exactly the same formula we used with Sumchus, where we said it sounds like Sumchus disagrees with our Mishnah, and then it also sounds like the rabbis disagree with our Mishnah. So the way that the Gemara responds to it is to say, well, look, the rabbis, easy to resolve, no issue. Sumchus, now that you mention it, I think it's actually more of a problem than we originally thought. Same thing here. The Gemara is going to say, the rabbis, easy to settle how the rabbis and their opinion in that case is not in conflict with our case in our Mishnah. But Rabbi Yosi, now that you mention it, I actually think Rabbi Yosi is a little bit more of a problem than we originally believed. Okay? So, hi, Mai. We're going to use two techniques over here. One is the technique, we've used them before, I'm just highlighting. One is the technique of I amras bishlama, ... Ela I amras. Which basically means, if you say X, that's fine, that makes sense. But if you're going to say Y, that's not going to be so easy to deal with. So, if you're going to say the rabbis, that makes sense. But if you're going to say Rabbi Yosi, that's going to be a bigger problem than we thought. So that's one technique we're going to use here. And the other technique is the Hasam Hacha technique, which of course is what we're trying to do over here, because Hasam means there, i.e. the case where Rabbi Yosi is debating the rabbis, and Hacha means over here, which obviously means our Mishnah. Because we're comparing the two, naturally we're going to use the Hasam Hacha principle, which is there was talking about such a scenario, whereas here is talking about a different scenario. Okay, that's how we're going to try and solve this. Says the Gemorah, if you want to say that our Mishnah should be on the same page as the rabbis, bishlama. That makes sense. That makes sense. Why does it make sense? Because the two cases are not alike. Hasam over there in the case where Reuven and Shimon deposited money with Levi. And now there's no clarity as to how much they each deposited. But there is clarity that they each deposited at least 100 zuz. That much we know. So Hasam over there, the Vadai, what does Vadai mean? Vadai. Of course. So it means for certain, right? Hasam in that case where the two guys deposited money worth a third. De Vadai, what is clear, what is certain is Hi money. What's high? We just said the word. What's high? This. Hi, what's a money?
Money.
It is money. It is exactly. Money is exactly money. It's 100 zuz. A money is 100 zuz. You have it at the top of the page as one of the vocab words. Money is 100 zuz. So, de vadai for sure. Hi money, the 100 zuz. De chad minayu, who belongs to one of the two guys, right? In other words, 100 zuz definitely belongs to Reuven, and 100 zuz definitely belongs to Shimon. The last 100 zuz that is in question either belongs to Reuven or it belongs to Shimon. Nobody's suggesting it belongs to both of them. So dechad minayu hu. It belongs to one of the litigants. But we don't know which one. Therefore, Amre Rabbanon, therefore the rabbis say, Yehei munach ad sheyavoy Eliyahu. Lock it away until we have resolution, represented by Eliyahu coming to solve the case for us. In other words, what's the logic to lock it away?
We can't decide.
Because if I give half of it to Levi and really the whole thing if I give half of it to Shimon and really the whole thing belonged to Reuven, then I'm actually stealing from Reuven. And if I give the whole thing to the one guy, I'm for sure stealing. So I don't have a way to resolve this.
That's a legal principle. Not if you're applying a legal principle.
What legal principle are you applying?
Well, I don't know.
Okay.
I'm just saying.
Okay, fair enough. When you find the legal principle, right? But fair enough. But the issue at hand over here is this 100 zuz that is sitting on the court's ledger right now, the case of Reuven versus Shimon. This 100 zuz only belongs to either Reuven or Shimon. And because I don't know who it belongs to, I have no choice. I cannot award it. Because there's a really good chance I'm going to award it wrong.
We've got 50% chance.
I have a 50% chance of getting it wrong. Exactly.
Sorry, can I ask? I wasn't here last week. As you said, is this intentional, or is this intentional, or is it an error?
Good question. It does make a difference, and that's a very good observation / question. Let's take it at this point. Let's take it at this point that it is intentional. In other words, some guy is trying to take advantage.
Well, one of them's taking it.
I'm saying let's assume that it's intentional. It's not an error. He's trying to take advantage of the fact that Levi does not remember who gave him what. Okay, fine. So now let's compare that to our Mishnah. Hacha over here in our Mishnah. De ikolamema. What does it say in our Mishnah? De ikolamema, that you could say. What's the ikolamema that you could say? De travayu hu. That's a good word, that travayu. It's going to come up a lot. I think we might have had it already. It comes up quite a lot. Travayu. Can you see the root?
We have had it. I just can't remember it.
Okay. So what's the root? The root is in blue. What's the root of it? Don't look at Yosi. It's an Aramaic word. It's not going to help. the blue, Tov, Reish, Yud, tray. Anybody remember the word tray?
Tray.
Correct? No, nothing to do with tray. Tray, two. Tray means two. In Aramaic. In Aramaic. 1, 2. 1, 2, 2. Okay, so if you're testing an Aramaic microphone, you're going chad tray, chad tray. Trey chad. There you go, Trey Zuzay. We did have it before. Exactly, we had it before. Trey Zuzay, exactly. Okay, so Trey is 2. Now we take the word Trey and we turn it into a word of ownership. Turavai hu, the two of them. Okay? So Hacha in our Mishnah, the Ikolamema, where there is a logical argument that says Di travai hu, that the Tallis maybe does belong to both of them. Maybe it's this highly unusual case where the garment was lying on the street and they actually both picked it up simultaneously, in which case they actually both have the right to it. In which case they actually deserve 50% each.
Or none.
No, there's no option of none. Where two people walk in with the Tallis, there's no option.
It's one whole thing. It's a Tallis, you can't make it into.
Yeah, but you're not ever going to split the Tallis. You're going to sell it and split the money. But the point is that the Tallis itself could potentially belong to the two of them in a partnership. Not a partnership of their willingness, but a partnership of their circumstance. So again, what's the Gemorah saying over here? I understand why the rabbis were so careful not to award anything in that case, because you have a very real chance of awarding money to the wrong guy. In our case, we have no issue awarding half a tallis to each person, because for all we know, that's what they should be getting. Because nobody has established ownership of this tallis yet. So there's no way that I could be taking something away from a person and giving it to somebody else. Yeah?
They both walked in at the same time.
Because they both walked in the same time carrying something that doesn't have a preceding owner.
You're saying you're splitting it.
So we're splitting it. As we'll see in the next line. Omer Rabbanon. So what do the rabbis say in that case? Polgi. What does polgi mean? Divide. Bishvua. But we put in the one little safety mechanism. Make them first take an oath. So the Gemorah says, I really don't think that the rabbis in that case of the two guys depositing money with one guy are really in any way at loggerheads with our Mishnah. It's just different scenarios. They don't speak the same, the two cases don't speak the same language. It's really not an issue. But now that you brought this up, Rabbi Yosi's view in that Mishnah should have been for sure a similar view in this Mishnah. Why? So we're going to use the Kal V'chomer, or as we call it over here, the Kol Shekain method. What's the Kol Shekain method? Or Kal V'chomer? How much more so? In other words, knowing the facts of that case, knowing the facts of this case, seeing that Rabbi Yosi is willing to take such a hardline view in that case, well, he definitely should take a hardline view in this case. Why? What's the logic? Let's think about it. What have we just learned? Well, there's a key piece of information that we've just learned. Remember, the Gemorah is building on this because it says, if you would say that, great.
Well, you don't know who
But,
owns.
what's that?
You don't know who owns.
In Rabbi Yosi's case.
Yes. Well, this case.
No, Rabbi Yosi's case.
Yes.
What information have we learned about Rabbi Yosi's case? That there is a certain amount of certainty in that case.
Some of the money.
What we know for sure. Here's what do the news anchors always say? Here's what we know so far. Okay? What we know for sure. Here's what we know for sure. What we know for sure is Ruvain needs to get 100 zuz back from Levi. What we know for sure is Shimon has to get 100 zuz back from Levi. What we know for sure is that the third 100 can't go anywhere because there's no way of knowing who deserves it, and therefore whoever you give it to is going to somehow compromise the other person. But we know for sure that 100 goes to Reuven, and 100 belongs to Reuven, and 100 belongs to Shimon. And what does Rabbi Yosi say about that? I don't care. I don't care. They're not getting it. I know they deserve it. They're not getting it. And he's got a reason for that, right? The reason is because we want to smoke out the liar. So the only way that you get the truth out of somebody who is willing to take a chance is by making him feel the pinch. So make them feel the pinch. But that's not the point. The point for here is he's saying, I know that they should be getting that money and I'm not going to give it to them. So now let's come to our story of the Tallis, our Mishnah.
So you don't know, you can't say that for us. It's a different case.
No, before you say different case. What do we know for sure in our Mishnah? Nothing. We know nothing for sure in our Mishnah. We know nothing. It's his word against his word, without witnesses. The only thing we know is that this garment doesn't belong to anybody. That's the only thing we know. Because if it did belong to somebody, these two guys wouldn't be fighting in the courts. That original owner would be saying, okay, thank you very much, I'll take my garment back.
Well, they both said I found it.
That's right. There's what?
There's no owner.
That's correct. If they claim they found it, it must be that there's no owner. So what do we know about this case? Nothing. So hang on. Rabbi Yosi, in a case where you have information, you're willing to overlook that information and confiscate the money. But in a case where you have no information, you're willing to give it to them. How does that work? Surely in a case where you have no information, that's all the more reason to say we're going to hold on to this until you can provide information. Okay, that's where the Gemorah is going at this point.
Can I just say, why with the money could they take an oath?
What oath are they going to take? That's a good question. It's a good question. What oath are they going to take?
They're going to say, I gave 200 and
Under oath, right?
yeah.
Good. Excellent question. Right? Why do they not take an oath? In that case, to try and clarify, basically how to deal with
There's
this.
a risk of taking the oath.
For who?
For the person who takes the oath, there's a risk he's going to lie, and it's a huge thing. They don't want to make
Okay.
anybody do that.
Good point. What else? What else have we learnt about the oath already?
Well, they're both
After the
allowed.
Simchas case, it's a rabbinic oath. It's a rabbinic oath that was applied. Remember, we've already concluded that in the end of the Simchas case. This is a special oath that the rabbis instituted for this case to try and dissuade somebody from taking a chance of chapping an item away from somebody else. There's no reason that oath would work in the case of a deposit. Okay, this is specifically because we believe there's a possibility that somebody would think, he had a windfall, I'm going to grab some of it. We want to dissuade that with an oath. That logic's not going to work in that case. Okay, let's read it inside. Eloi amris. But if you want to say, in other words, if you are going to suggest Rabbi Yosi, that Rabbi Yosi and our Mishnah are effectively coming from the same halachic perspective, well, let's work this out. Now, the next word is a great word. And we did already have this word before, because I remember that we did the whole Yaakov Shweki song thing. Hashta, right? What's hashta?
That's in the song.
It's in the song, right? What's hashta? Hashta is now. This is literally, you can picture the scene. This is the sage sitting there saying, now, let's examine this whole logical process, right? It's like sit back and we're going to nitpick the details. So hashta now. Uma hasam. What happened there in that case where Rabbi Yosi was willing to take away the entire money that was being contested? Uma hasam. What happened over there? Let's analyze the case. De bevadai. What's bevadai? Certainly. De bevadai, certainly. Ikamone lemar. 100 zuz definitely belongs to Reuven. No question. Ve'ikamone lemar. And for sure, 100 zuz belongs to Shimon. No question. And yet, Omer Rabbi Yosi Yehi Munachat Sheyavo Eliyahu, and yet Rabbi Yosi is willing to say, take it all, lock it up. So hacha, here in our case, de'ika lemeimer dechad minayhuhu, where there is a reason to think that maybe the whole tallis really only belongs to one guy. Maybe he did get there first. And maybe he really should get this garment. So loy kol sheken, is that not all the more reason to avoid the risk of giving away half of what he potentially could own? Maybe we should just confiscate the whole thing. In other words, Rabbi Yosi is willing to take something we know should be shared. Surely he should take something we don't know should be shared. And quite frankly, we don't know anything. Okay? So that's why the Gemorah at this point is like, It does not look like Rabbi Yosi and our Mishnah can be reconciled.
So it's, again, even though we're on this one, even though we're discussing this, they're now questioning what they said about the tallis. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah. But I'm saying the perspective that we're coming about the tallis raises this big eyebrow about Rabbi Yossi's view, because surely Rabbi Yosi would say, in the interests of avoiding awarding the wrong thing to the wrong person, take it away, because that's his whole philosophy. You don't want to award something to a person if they don't deserve it, so you just keep it in the evidence room. Do the same thing here.
How's that last line translated?
Isn't it better to
The last line,
Hacha deika.
hacha, here in our case, there is reason to suggest that maybe the whole tallis belongs to one guy, because maybe he did get there first. Like kol sheken, is that not all the more reason why you should? And when he says one guy, it says one guy and we don't know which one, is that not all the more reason why we should just hang on to the tallis and not award it, because we might get it wrong?
But if you gave them at least 100,
Yeah.
and at least you make them happy, but if you say you're not going to give them anything,
Yeah, that's Rabbi Yosi's whole philosophy.
yeah, but
That's it. I'm saying that's his whole philosophy.
okay.
His whole philosophy is we don't want to make people happy. We want to do the right thing.
Yes.
That's his
Say
point.
that at the brothel. Why did you say that at the brothel? Give him nothing.
Yeah, they can remember.
Okay, so the Gemorah is going to answer as follows. You ready? The Gemorah is going to answer as follows. Afilu Tema Rabbi Yosi. As we've already seen before, whenever the Gemorah uses this expression Afilu Tema, it means you could even reconcile the opinion of the person we've just asked a question about with the opinion of our Mishnah. So Afilu Tema Rabbi Yosi, you could even say that Rabbi Yosi's opinion fits our Mishnah. At face value, it looks like it's so different from a Mishnah, but Afilu Tema, you could even say that Rabbi Yosi fits our Mishnah. How so? Now we're going to say, because there are two different cases. And in order to illustrate that there are two different cases, we're going to say Hasam, Hacha. Okay? There the case is X, here the case is Y. Now, for anybody with a keen eye, you should immediately notice that we've got two Hasam Hachas in one answer. Which doesn't really make sense, because surely if you're comparing two cases and you're saying that the one is different from the other, you just show how they're different from each other. So we are about to encounter a term called inami. Do you see that under the keywords? See inami? Inami literally means if, also. But basically what it means is the Gemorah is going to suggest an alternative answer. So instead of giving us a single answer here, the Gemorah is going to suggest two possible answers. The Gemorah is then going to show a flaw in the second answer. And because of that flaw, it's going to conclude that the first answer is the only way to solve this.
There's an answer coming.
What's that?
There's an answer at deciding.
Two answers. But only one of the answers is going to stand the test. Okay? So before we go further, just have a look. So you got the word inami over here, which introduces the fact that there's an alternative answer. But then we've got this expression, mechavarta kideshanin meikara. Do you see that? The next key word. Mechavarta kideshanin meikara. This is real Aramaic for you. But you might have encountered this word in Hebrew. Let's see. Let's do a test. You ever heard of the word chiver, not to be confused with the word iver? Ever heard the word chiver? Not chaver, it's got a vav. The chaver has a base. Pale. Very good. Right? It crept into Hebrew. Right? So what does it mean? Pale, white. Okay, so when a person is not looking good in Hebrew, you'll say that that they look chiver. You say they look pale. In Aramaic, when we use the word, we mean lily white, clear as day, crystal clear.
Which word is that?
Mechavarta. So the root of that word is chiver, ches vav reish. Mechavarta means it is white. It is clear.
Itchaver in Hebrew. Itchaver.
When it paled,
No, itchaver means it become very clear.
it became clear. Oh, okay. I would have thought hitbarer, so I didn't realize hitchaver is something people use as well. There you go. So mechavarta means crystal clear. Kedeshanin. Okay, in that word shanin, there's a word that we say in the Shema that has the same root as the word shanin. Shanin. Think of the Shema. Shanin. Good. What's the word in the Shema? V'shinantam levanecha. Right? V'shinantam levanecha. Same root. Shinun is repetitive learning. V'shinantam levanecha. You should consistently learn these principles and these ideas with your children. Okay. What? Can you think of a link between what we're learning and that word? Mishnah. Okay, similar. There's an association of it. So mechaberta, what is clearest is kiddushanin, is the way that we learnt it. Mei ikara. Okay, let's pull out the Hebrew word that's hiding inside the Aramaic there, and that is the word ikar. What's an ikar?
Basis, the truth.
Okay, you said two different things. The truth and the basis are not the same thing. So, which do you think is the?
There's a song.
There's a song for everything.
Right?
So, okay. What's an ikar? Not a truth.
It's a principle.
Not even a principle. A what? Right? That's the way we use it. We say the ikar, right? But an ikar is actually, it's another synonym for a root. Okay? So, why do you call it the 13 ikrim? Because these are the foundations of Jewish faith, right? It's like the roots that hold up the whole tree. So the root is where something begins. Mei ikara means from the beginning. So mechavarta, it is clearest, kedushan, in the way that we learnt it, mei ikara originally. In other words, what's going to happen over here is the Gemorah is going to suggest an answer. Then the Gemorah is going to suggest, or perhaps there's another answer. Then the Gemorah is going to say, no, that second answer that you have proposed has a flaw. Therefore, it was clearer the way we taught it the first time. Which is another way of saying the first answer is the better answer. Okay? So we've got two possible ways of reconciling Rabbi Yosi with our Mishnah. Only the first of the two is going to stand the test of a robust Gemorah interrogation. So I feel at time Rabbi Yosi, we could even say that Rabbi Yosi is in agreement with our Mishnah. Why? Because Hassam, in their case of Reuven and Shimon depositing money with Levi, and now there's confusion as to how much money they should get back. Vadai? Certainly. Ika Ramoi. There is a crook. Definitely. And that was your question, right? Was it intentional? We're saying it's intentional. Vadai Ika Ramoi. We're convinced that one of those guys claiming 200 zuz is crooked. Because it can't be. It's not possible that they both gave 200 zuz. That's not an option. So one of the people is a Ramoi, for sure. Therefore, we lean in the direction of penalizing them. Because we know that somebody's lying, and we don't know which one, so we penalize them according to Rabbi Yosi. Hacha, whereas in our case here, where the two people walk into the courts holding on to a single garment, mi yemar. How do you like that word? Mi yemar.
Who will say?
Who will say? Excellent, right? Mi yemar, who will say, de ika ramoi. Who's going to say that there is a...
Yeah, no one can.
No, nobody's even suggesting it. It was never our conversation until now. I mean, we, between us, had a conversation. Maybe the one guy's trying to steal from the... But who is suggesting in our Gemorah? What's that?
They would have walked in and said, he tried to take it, it's mine.
That's right.
They never said that.
Exactly. Nobody's... Excellent point. The litigants are not even blaming each other for being dishonest. They're not accusing each other of being crooks. So if we don't have a reason to suspect somebody is crooked, we're not going to suspect that they're crooked. Right? Ema, instead what we're going to say is, Turavayu. What's Turavayu? The two of them. Bahadei Hadadi. We actually had this expression earlier. Bahadei Hadadi, simultaneously, Agbehua. Picked up the tallis, because in order to acquire something that's lying in the road, you actually have to lift it. That's how you acquire something. So we're going to say, as much as statistically it might not sound like it's a highly plausible scenario, we're going to say maybe they both picked it up at the same time. In other words, Rabbi Yosi wants to penalize crooked people. Rabbi Yosi does not want to penalize people who have weird coincidences. So there, he's willing to take away all the money until somebody pipes up. Here, he's not going to take away the tallis, because what's the value in that? You can't squeeze a confession out of somebody who didn't do anything wrong. That's answer suggestion number 1. Inami. Alternatively, Hasam, over there in that Mishnah, Konis le Rabbi Yosi le Ramoi. What is a knas? Have you ever heard that expression? A knas. A fine, a penalty. So that's the noun. Konis is the verb. Konis le Rabbi Yosi le Ramoi. The reason why Rabbi Yosi wants to penalize the potential liar, not the potential, he's definitely penalizing the liar because he's taking everybody's money. So naturally the liar will be penalized. Why is he doing that? Ki heichi de. That means in order that. Ki heichi de. In order that. Loide. Would you believe that the root of this word is yud, daled, hey? And that's got nothing to do with anybody's hands. Okay? Yud, Daled, Hey. Now, it's one of those roots that's difficult to track inside words because very often a 3-letter root, and almost all roots are 3 letters, with a Yud at the beginning, very often that Yud disappears in many of the forms of the word. So this Yud, Daled, Hey root should relate to the first word that you say every morning. Moderni, right? Modeh, Todah. Same word, same root. But the yud disappears in most of the forms. So that's why we don't see it. So what does it mean? Modeh, what does it mean?
Thank you.
It's actually not what it means. To admit. To admit. So ki, heichi, deloidi, the reason why Rabbi Yosi wants to penalize the potential crook, or penalize the one of the two who is a crook, is because he's trying to get him, deloidi, that he should admit. They should admit that, okay, I'll come clean. I just want my 100 zuz.
Yeah, you can't do that in the Tallis because they don't say anything. You can't.
Oh, thank you. Exactly. Hocha over here. My peseda. Anybody know what that word means? Peseda. Ever heard of hefsed?
Yeah, no, that's
Hefsed. Loss. Ma pseda, what loss could there be for either guy holding on to the talus? Islay is there for him, deloidi, that will force him to admit. In other words, Rabbi Yosi's whole mechanism is apply pressure where the person will feel that he's going to lose money so that he'll admit what really happened, so at least he'll get his money back. How's that going to work in the talus? Okay, we keep in the talus until you admit which of you did not deserve the talus. There's nothing to lose. Can't lose something you haven't had originally, right? You can't lose something before you've had it. What's the weakness of that answer? It's the first.
The other one, he had.
Remember, this answer is suggesting that all we want to do is to apply pressure so that a person will admit in order that they don't lose money, and they can't lose in a case where they found something. What's the weakness of that argument?
They may not admit it even if you apply pressure.
Okay.
Well, how do you prove that belongs to him? Don't you
Okay.
have witnesses?
Let's go back a step. The Mishnah said, Ze oimer ani mitzasiha, v'ze oimer ani mitzasiha, ze oimer kula sheli, v'ze oimer kula sheli. Why did the Mishnah give 2 different ways of saying effectively the same thing? This person says, I found it, this person says, I found it, this person says, it's all mine, this person says, it's all mine. How did the Gemorah explain why it uses 2 different expressions?
Just to highlight that they did not find it at the same time.
Well, we don't know that.
Well, you can't prove
maybe
it.
they knew that might be the course decision, so award half, and they won't say it's all mine.
Why does the Mishnah give us 2 different ways of saying what sounds like the same thing?
So that you can't say,
Scenario or something like that.
Because what?
In case you thought it was one.
In case you thought it was one scenario. So it's not one scenario. So what's the second scenario? The first scenario is that they're each saying, I found it. What's the second scenario?
We don't want to share it.
No.
says I saw it first.
Well, how
No.
do you prove it?
No. What's the second scenario? The first scenario is I found it in the street. I found it in the street. What's the second scenario?
Do you have
Was it on a
witnesses?
cow or something?
There's no witnesses. No cows. No witnesses and no cows.
Like driving in the pool, I don't know.
No.
It was
4
mine.
months ago.
No.
It was mine.
No. The second scenario was the person says, I bought it, and I bought it. Right? Kula sheli, it's all mine, I bought it. Right? Slap down money on the counter, right? In that case, you could lose something because you've paid.
If you tell the truth.
If you're not telling the truth, if you're telling or not telling, either way, you could lose because you've paid money. So Rabbi Yosi's logic should apply.
But they're going to get the money back.
Who's going to get the money back?
If you pay money and
He's not giving the tallis back to the shopkeeper. We're confiscating the tallis.
No one's getting it.
they don't get the money back.
No. No.
But if they both slap money down on the counter,
Yeah.
it's very clear that put 10 zuz and 10 zuz.
Right.
It's not someone claiming 200 or 100.
Doesn't matter. If we confiscate the tallis, that's not the seller's problem. In the same way as it wasn't the seller's problem that they both slapped their money on the counter. Right? So if we're saying Rabbi Yosi only applies his case where you could make somebody feel they're going to lose out and therefore they'll come clean, in the case of Kula Shali and Kula Shali, which is a case that each of them says, I'm the guy who paid for this tallis, perfect solution, confiscate the tallis. Then the guy who didn't actually, he just slapped his money down but didn't actually make a proper transaction with a seller should come and say, okay, listen, I was being a bit forward, I was being a bit pushy, you know. So let's see. Asks the Gemorah, Tinach Metzia. Tinach Metzia. That makes sense. Tinach means it's like it rests, it's comfortable. Metzia, if they're arguing about I found the tallis versus I found the tallis, because then obviously there is no pressure to apply because nobody stands to lose anything. But merkach or memkar, in the case where it is a fight over a potential transaction, my ikka lemema, what are you going to say then? Because theoretically Rabbi Yosi should apply his principle, because theoretically you could make somebody lose money, and if you could make somebody lose money, that's a great leverage point to be able to get the truth out of somebody. Why would Rabbi Yosi then agree with our Mishnah? So therefore the Gemorah says Elo, you have to reject that second answer. We learned last week that the word Elo would mean reject what you said previously and say as follows: Mechabato kedeshanin meikora. The first answer we suggested is the one that is the clearest. Go with that first answer. In other words, that the difference Rabbi Yosi sees between his case and our Mishnah is that in his case there definitely is a crooked person, and so therefore you've got to deal with it. And in our case, there most likely is not a crooked person, and therefore you can't penalize people just because it's convenient.
But how do we fit in the fact that one of them may have bought it?
No, even if somebody may have bought it, the reality is that we don't expect that they were necessarily a crooked person. It could just be that they were a pushy person. And there's a big difference between the woman who's taking the last kosher Pesach cheese and somebody who's stealing the last kosher Pesach cheese.
When you talk about the loss, you mean the shopkeepers lose?
No, we want the litigants to feel like they're losing. The shopkeeper's done well. He's got paid twice. so he's done well.
Does he keep it?
In the tallis.
No, not the tallis.
Oh, in the other case. No, he's not a shopkeeper.
The tallis with the buying and selling.
Yes, he keeps the money. Why not?
Keeps the money.
Yeah, they were willing purchasers. Yeah.
But in both cases, if the person, the crook, is doing to revenge,
If he's what?
if he's doing, and not for the purpose of gaining, in the purpose for revenging or punishing the person.
We don't suspect people of that kind of bad behavior on the whole. Laws always have to be made for the common cases. We don't suspect on the whole that people do that kind of thing, you know, revenge. My economy, what is there to say? In other words, what could you possibly say?